Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Election is Caliphate's push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Join NINAS Townhall section. We're here to learn and support one another. Over the next hour, we'll be sharing ideas and insights related to today's topic: Nigerian Protest 2024, Corruption and Bad Governance Flow from 1999 Constitution. NINA's address to those seeking change in Nigeria. Today's NINA's broadcast, entitled Corruption and Bad Governance Flow from 1999 Constitution, was recorded on September 10, 2022, as an address to those seeking change in Nigeria, including organizers of 2020 NSAS protests, the Obedience Movement of 2023, and the recent End Bad Governance Protest 2024. Thank you for listening.
Touched on the three leading campaigns: the PDP, the APC, and the Labour Party, and their candidates for what they are advertising in terms of the constitution that we say is the problem. As far as we're concerned, there's no other thing to discuss until we settle the question of union agreement that has gone bad. We have no union as of now. Now, for reasons that border on the PVC revolution and the obedient movement, in which young people have, trooped out in such numbers, very convinced that they have found a great driver for the vehicle Nigeria that will take them to El Dorado. We have to now zoom in on that campaign of the Labour Party and their candidate. While addressing that candidate and that party, we're also addressing the obedient movement people, the PVC revolution people, so that they can understand exactly what they are, getting into. The reason we have to do this extra zooming is that our people all over the world are rejoicing that something is about to happen. Something great is about to happen. We can tell you authoritatively that we are heading to disaster if we proceed on that wrong assumption, because it's totally wrong. Any campaign about what to do about Nigeria now that does not begin with settling that union dispute is going to fail. In fact, catastrophically, because the people who have been on that campaign for over 2 decades, it was the unfinished business of Nadeko that Pronaco came to do. And from that point on, a consensus that involved the whole country was built on how we could have gone back to, being a federation one more time. That consensus was carried forward 2007 when we filed a suit challenging the legitimacy of the 1999 Constitution with all the kind of plaintiffs we saw. We went on to get in the constituent components, particularly in the alliance territories, to formally repudiate that constitution by way of solemn assemblies. You remember that in the preamble to that constitution, it says, "We the people, having firmly and solemnly resolved," mark that word, solemnly. So if it is a lie that we solemnly resolve, and a day comes when the people, the people who have been credited with that action actually gathered in their good numbers go on YouTube and check the title, Solemn Assembly of the Peoples of the Lower Niger. You will see when the eastern half of southern Nigeria, including the John, the Ogoni, the Anang, the Efik, the Urobo, the Bini, the Igbo, all of us went out there at the presidential 27th of April in 2015 to say to the global community that we repudiate this constitution, this fraud of 99 that are validated by our name, that is inserted, our signature that is inserted without reference to us. And so, having done all of that, we proceeded to the consultations that we have to, particularly in the international security. There are people who have investments in Nigeria, the owners of the oil and gas assets and all kinds of other considerations. We went all the way to the UN trying to make sure that we alerted the global community, on what is going wrong in Nigeria, particularly when the same people who impose Sharia, and by the way, that solemn repudiation of that constitution by the three blocks in the alliance, the East, that's the Lower Niger Territory, the Yoruba Territory, and the Middle Belt between 2015 and 2018. These three were coming behind the year 2000, imposition of Sharia by the 12 contiguous states that adopted Sharia, because Section 10 of that constitution, as bad as it is, as included as it is, Section 10 expressly forbids the adoption of state religion. And so, when 12 contiguous states who simultaneously adopted Sharia, they only seceded from our secular union. They seceded from our secular union. And so, if they have seceded from our union, and the other three blocks go to, solemn assemblies to repudiate the constitution that bring everybody to their spaces. We have no union. We have no union. Let those who will come crying tomorrow listen now that under that false claim, we're saying we have no union. And those who are choking in that imposition, those who are choking in that fraud, are not going to just, wait to be killed to the last person. And so, while we in zooming down to the Labour Party and their candidates, again, we had mentioned before that the first position of that Labour candidate, P2P, was that the engine of the Nigerian vehicle was knocked. He agreed with us that that engine is that constitution, and that unless we fix it, we shouldn't be looking for a driver. Really. If a vehicle has a knocked engine, is it driver that will solve the problem? Even if that driver claims to be some kind of mechanic. If the engine is knocked, it's not the matter. It's not it is not in that state that you begin to load young people who are in a hurry, who are facing the danger that might catch up with them if they don't move from where they are now. They are looking for how to escape. And you are loading a vehicle that you already acknowledge that the engine is not. That's the kind of thing that is going on in that campaign of let me, the excellent driver, take you to the great destination. And so, for the young people who have been so invited to believe that this excellent driver is going to take them to a great destination, NINAS is telling you, NINAS is inviting you to please come. Let us define the change we seek. We know you want change. You want an end to corruption. You want an end to the humongous cost of governance. You want an end to impunity. You want an end to decayed infrastructure. You want an end to denial of opportunity, the way we saw in the Constitution all these years. And so, if that is what you want, how are you going to obtain it? It's not by emotions that it will come, because the candidate that is coming to the candidate you are following to try to get it, he hasn't provided any kind of answer. The first, having acknowledged that the engine is knocked, he then, when we responded to that, he then says, makes some kind of U-turn to say, really, the Constitution is not the problem. The Constitution is not the reason where we are. It was a kind of a shock, but I think his handlers were looking for some kind of answer to our own contention. And then we responded further to say, no, this is why. He says is that leadership. Please, the young people and the rest of the country, all the problems you see, let us give you one formula by which you can begin to approach the solution. That formula is, we call it the WWW interrogation. Why is it so? There's corruption. Why is it so? NINAS is able to point you to the sections of the 1999 Constitution that creates the corruption, and the section that, protect the beneficiaries of grant corruption, Section 308. The section that gives the specky to the heads of the executive branch, the president and the governors, and the section that says that absorbs government of responsibility towards you. So between all of that, quite apart from the 68 items of exclusive list, we also talk about the cost of governance, the sheer cost of governance. It is not by going to wear only one shoe or one trouser. The 36 states that Nigeria have been fractured into is the bleeding, that is the main, artery for the bleeding of Nigeria. The same as the local government areas that we have to finance every month. Where is the money coming from? Who is producing what? And a new president is not going to dismiss the 36 states to say, oh, we're not going to give it. The bureaucracies of those 36 states, where there's governor, there's House of Assembly, every one member of that House of Assembly had his own convoy. The council chairman, everybody is a government unto himself, 774. So we have over 800 governments that have to be financed every month. Whereas at the time we were a federation, we had only 4 units. And we are still looking back with nostalgia to what was achieved in Awolowo's time, in Emma Bara's time, in Ahmadu Bello's time, in those 3 regions of the time. Even then, it's a Midwest. And so we're just saying that the humongous cost of governance is flowing from that constitution. The WWW interrogation I'm talking about. Why? If you ask the first why, you get the first set of answer. Subject that first answer, you get to another why. Okay, there's corruption all over the place. Why? You see the first thing. But why is it allowed to be so? By the time you ask that question like 3 times, you are going to get to the root of the problem, because you will then begin to see that it was not we, the people, who wrote down those rules of engagement, and that it is the people who were hoping to benefit from that corruption that wrote it. It's the people that were hoping to benefit from the impunity that wrote it. It's the people that were eager to seize the economic assets of other people that wrote the exclusive list. It's people that want to point guns at other people for all times that put security, arms and ammunition on that exclusive list. And so, if you, by the time you ask the first why, and then you come to the second why from the answer you got, and then the third why, you will immediately see that it is coming from this, and it is because it was inserted there. Then you now see who inserted it for what purpose. So I would think that we go from there to where the same candidate, having said that leadership is the problem, not constitution, then we say for certain that leadership is coming from that constitution. If the Labour Party and their candidate will want a debate on the subject, we will be more than glad to come to shed light on that position. It is that constitution that is responsible for the bad leadership we have. Why do we have a central electoral body in a federation called the Federation of Nigeria? That people will sit in Abuja and decide all of what will happen that will produce that leadership. Where are we going to get the competence from? Because it is a matter of horse trading. We saw it happen even in the primaries for which the candidate left PDP. And so, if the bad leadership is coming from that same constitution, if the corruption is coming from that constitution, if the impunity is coming from that constitution, everything we can complain about coming from that constitution, why don't we turn off the tap? Let us go turn off the tap. And so we don't want, initially, we were going to believe that it may just be a matter of ignorance. But progressively, we are beginning to think it has more to do with some level of dishonesty. It may not be with the candidate, but the people, he is not a lawyer. And so there must be some lawyer, even if he's not the one to come to do the debate. Let there be a team from that candidate, from that campaign that can come. Let the obedient movement people come to listen so that we can explain to them exactly what, because they're going to be not only disappointed, they're going to feel defrauded when they find out that the people who are loading them into an engine and a vehicle that has no engine, when they get to find out that those people knew that there was no engine in that vehicle, and yet loaded them at the time they were running away from the danger of a flood invasion and all kinds of other calamities that are already converged. It will be funny. It will be a sorry sight to behold the day those young people find out that they have been misled, they have been deceived. And so we just want to let everybody know that this is the time to stop and sort out that problem. When we press further, the same candidate now says that, oh, there's the 2014 conference report. I'm going to let me read the tweet that was sent out from North Carolina. He said the review of the Constitution will be part of the overall restructuring Nigeria's desire. It will entail legislative, executive, and judicial action. Ultimately, the Nigerian people will decide. This is meaningless, totally meaningless, because the mandate of the National Assembly does not extend to constitutional making. Our sovereignty remains with us. We elected those who went to the National Assembly for the purpose of making laws under the constitution we have made. We have not made any constitution. That's the contention. Anybody who is not willing to listen to that contention now is going to learn on the street the meaning of constitution. Constitution simply means what it says, to constitute. Under what terms, at what point did the Yoruba submit their sovereignty and their people of 60 million into this union? Under what terms, at what point did they just submit their land and their waters and their people into this union that now give over their assets to people who are not who do not particularly wish them well? Under what terms, at what point did we all submit our right to secure ourselves to people who are bent on killing us off, like we have seen? Because that's what exclusively that has police and arms and ammunition and military under the exclusive control of the very people who are, on an ethnic cleansing onslaught against us. We never agreed to such. We are saying it loud and clear to you. We have gone everywhere we can go to tell those who need to know, because it's going to become problematic. Those who will go to that election and say they have now won to come and govern, go again and see on YouTube the title, a broadcast from NINAS that says the winner of 2023 will find no Nigeria to govern. It may look simplistic. We're not threatening anybody. We're just telling everybody what they need to know. Because we're in contact with the people who are complaining, the people who are fed up, the people who are ready to do anything to save their life, because it's now their life. Their assets have been taken for over 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades. Now their life is required of them. The revolution to do away with the old order already succeeded. Let nobody kill anybody, because the people are thinking that the election, that the revolution is building up. No, that revolution, it was a referendum on the old order. It was a referendum on unitarism. It was a referendum on corruption. It was a referendum on that constitution itself, that young people would do the kind of thing they did to basically disown the two parties that have been passing Nigerians among themselves, since 1999, the APC and PDP. Having succeeded in that revolution, because except somebody wants to deceive himself, it is a rejection of the old order. No, there's no other way to explain it. Having succeeded in that revolution, how do you then bring the dividends of that? How do you convert that success into concrete outcome that will bring a new life to you? We invite those who, executed that revolution to come forward for us to work out how their demand, that revolution can demand an end to that constitution. That was what the NSAS people refused to do, and that was why their revolution ended in fiasco. If the ones who are doing PVC revolution now refuse to direct that whole energy to the base of the problem, we are saying it without equivocation. It is that constitution that is the problem you want to solve. Every other thing you are told, bad leadership, bad corruption, impunity, all of those things are like, flowing from the tap called the 1999 Constitution. So we invite NINAS, invite the organizers of that revolution, the obedient movement, the PVC revolution, the obedient movement, in all of it, let us sit down and define how that revolution can bring about the change we seek. That change is called self-determination. That is to decide how we're going to relate in this union, how we're going to govern. The rules of engagement in the union has to be set by us. Otherwise, those who are, sharing our blood with impunity, those who are killing us without consequence, are going to find a way to carry on. And as long as that constitution is there, you have lost out completely. So the energy, the fuel we need to take down that constitution of 1999 is already more than available. In fact, if we were looking for 10 gallons of fuel or energy to take down the 1999 constitution, what you have done is already the equivalent of 30 gallons. So it will be wasted if you submit the product of that revolution to the very people who impose that constitution to now organize the election that can go this way and not that way. They can actually branch off from the 22 election. If you do not know, we hear them talking about security that is bad for which election. They can suspend the election on their own terms. They can suspend that constitution and your rights even before you get to the election. But even if we walk on to that election, that constitution will survive after the election, and your revolution will have been wasted. Anything short of taking down that constitution is no change at all. It's no change at all. Those who want to understand it, let us turn off the tap. Those who want to understand it, we are ever willing, we are available to explain to them, because the consequences of wasting that revolution in going to election instead of transition that will more or less take that, decommission that constitution and restore your life back to you, restore your future back to you that has been mortgaged by that constitution. Let nobody deceive you. Let nobody deceive you. The cost will be grave, because the agenda, the Fulani conquest agenda, is best facilitated by that country. That's why they are struggling to take us to election. You have no control what the INEC, the exclusively managed, will do. You have no control over what the security forces they manage will do. Even if your candidate emerges, he is not going to be able to touch anything in that constitution that will bring any relief to you. Let's not experiment with our lives. Let us reason. We still have 5 months plus to reason it all out together. If you come to that table of reasoning, who knows? There may be things you know that we don't know. You put it out there. But we are telling you from work that took 22 years, that has gone across all continents, that has gone across the nooks and crannies of Nigeria, that involved the people who created the problem and the ones who have been struggling to solve it, that everything flows from that tap, and that we can turn off the tap by what you have done. If you don't turn off that tap, we are right back to where we are escaping from. And then we stop it there.
At this point, it's my pleasure to invite our NINAS spokesperson, Mr. Tony Nadi, to shed more light on today's topic: corruption and bad governance flow from 1999. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome everybody. First is to let us know that the reason we come every week, every Tuesday, to examine some of the information we have out there in the public space is a part of the framing the movement towards the inevitable union construction, inevitable constitutional reconstruction of Nigeria that will happen whether anybody wants it or not. That reconstruction of that will be preceded by renegotiation, reconfiguration, will happen whether the people in government or the ones who are aspiring to go to government like it or not, because it is all about the lands and the peoples trapped into the failed Lugarden experiment of 1914, the sovereignties detained and now hijacked by that constitution and its operators. But unfortunately for all of them, sovereignty is inalienable. And the right to self-determination that is an incident of that sovereignty is also inalienable, meaning that those who are alleged to have agreed to be in this union on the terms contained in this constitution are at liberty to assert their self-determination, are at liberty to recover their sovereignty that have been hijacked and detained for so many decades. And what NINAS is doing is to dissect all of it, to organize all the victims of it, to advise the ignorant lot that have been arguing with the signboard on the subject, some of them claiming to be people, government over a disputed Nigeria. Disputed in the sense that the constitution by which they are governing, the constitution by which Nigeria is currently convened, the constitution from which they are drawing all their powers. I don't want to talk about authority because authority had not been vested in them. They are particularly the president, the interim presidency we have. Even if you multiply the powers of the Supreme Court by 1,000, they will not be allowed to operate above the union itself because the constitution is the union. And we're saying that the false claim that the peoples of Nigeria submitted themselves into union to be governed and managed in the manner prescribed and dictated by that constitution that they did not make is the contention, is the bone of contention, is the issue that must now be resolved. And we propose a transitioning to do so in an orderly fashion within the context of the inalienable right to self-determination of those who have been held here against their will, to the end that the union might be reworked into something that will be accommodating of all, into something that might allow the energies trapped here to be unleashed for developmental purposes, into something that will put the union, if we retain it, back on the path of progress. That reconstruction can also be one in which it will be a confederation. It might result, as long as it is the peoples of Nigeria in the formations of their choice that decided to be in union in the first place, and that is by referendum. They're going to do that, whether anybody likes it or not. They might choose to be a confederation in which the union office will be further trimmed down to managing much, much fewer subject matters than the 68 items we have on the exclusive list today, because that's where the problem is coming from. That your sovereignty is taken by people who fractured you into 36 states and smuggled in several government areas, both of which now determine the representation in the place of decision making, whether it's in the executive branch, but more particularly in the National Assembly. And the resource allocation, opportunity allocation to all, you are now a minority in a situation where you are not only the majority, but your economic assets represent 98% of what is being shared in that dubious representation imposed by this 36-state structure. compounded by 7 and 4 local government areas, all done by decree. And so we're just saying that the purpose of coming together is for us to know exactly where things are in that journey, in that unstoppable journey to union reconstruction. I didn't talk about the third option. That is, either we go back to being a proper federation on our own volition, or a confederation if we think we have to get more autonomy than a federation might offer us. But there's a third option, the emergence of independent units of sovereign state entities from the defunct Federation of Nigeria that collapsed in 1966 and buried in 1967, the day Yakubu Gowon fractured the 4 federating regions into 12 states that were now, whose assets and the assets of the regions confiscated by that federal illicit federal government. And so, let it be clear to everybody that what NINAS is doing can result in any of these 3. The only thing NINAS has done differently from all the noise and commotion is to put on the table an orderly process by which the issue can be engaged. Because if we don't engage it, it will engage itself. People who are choking are going to take unilateral steps to which they're entitled by their sovereignty, it is their land, by their right to self-determination that attaches to that sovereignty, which is inalienable. And so it is the operators of the unitary Nigeria that will have to work out their salvation now. What are they going to, what do they have to do to persuade these people who are fed up with this union of death, union of backwardness, union of attrition? Nigeria is an incinerator of talents. Nigeria is the graveyard of innovation. And so you have all these potentials, and every day you see people running their mouth on TV, potential, potential, potential. Oh, I'm coming to make it work. Why has it not worked for 64 years? Why can't you ask why that potential has remained only potential? And the rest of the world that gone from industrial revolution to other kinds of revolution, they've moved, they've left you in the forest. We have identified the virus behind this pandemic called Nigeria. It is the unitary constitutional arrangement. We have identified the operators of that arrangement as the #1 enemies of the people who are crying of hunger now, who have been liquidated by insecurity. The younger elements running in all directions, anywhere but Nigeria, dying in the deserts, drowning in the Mediterranean Sea, and getting overseas to be enslaved. All because their country does not have a place for them. All because their country is constantly chasing after them to kill them. Because when the Nigeria that is supposed to provide security for you is standing by, and people come from Mauritania and wherever to come to behead you, either on your farm or in your community, it is Nigeria that killed you. When electricity will fail you to the point where the business you try to do collapses on your head, it is Nigeria that collapsed that business. When you are qualified for opportunities, which may be education in terms of entry to study, and you are locked out by quota system that brings those who are not fit to clean your shoes to be admitted ahead of you. And then you try 3-4 times, jump, then you go do something else that takes you in a totally different trajectory. It is Nigeria that has forced you out of your destiny. So that Nigeria is a monster. That unitary Nigeria that has nothing but evil for you is a monster that must be put to death. And the constitution we're talking about is not that booklet you are seeing, is the fact of being corralled into a union on the falsehood that you submitted yourself into that union, and the further falsehood that you agreed and codified together with others who are equally trapped the terms of that union. So let us get it clearly that these meetings are for the purpose of explaining to us where we are in that journey to joint jailbreak from this British erected caliphate prison called Nigeria. It was the British that set up the enterprise, the offshore criminal enterprise called Nigeria in 1914 without reference to the owners of the sovereignty, the owners of the lands. They've stolen for 114 years, yet they are not satisfied. They've destroyed our education system by teaching us, by setting up curriculum in which there's no critical thinking, in which the education does not produce any skills anybody can take to any place, except for maybe the medical, because human beings must be catered for. So maybe you have doctors that can cut people open and fix it, because that's now such an essential service that even the ones everybody has to provide, because even their diplomatic missions you can't do without that. So yes, there may be some doctors that go to get some work to do for themselves, but the education system that they put in place, the grammar school you had to attend, did not teach you. They will teach you science that does not lead you to technology. So you see all kinds of professors of nuclear physics, professors of chemical, industrial chemistry. But that country is not producing even a fraction of its needs. Professors of agriculture all over the place. Where is the food that's being grown? By the knowledge they pass on to the practical users of the information they obtained. We could count across all sectors of economy and human endeavor. Why are we discussing fuel subsidy and the hardship it has, the withdrawal, whether it existed or why are we talking about any kind of any difficulty with petroleum products? Because that constitution locks down the capacity to refine by the exclusive list of that constitution. Anybody who is talking about petroleum products that are not available in Nigeria, whether it's Labour Congress or the people organizing all kinds of protests, anybody who is talking about that question of petroleum products that will not be available, but who is not discussing the reason it's not available, who does not know that it is the Constitution of Nigeria that locks down petroleum refineries by making that power to deal with that subject matter the exclusive business of the illicit federal government that doesn't want anything good for you. And so the 4 refineries that they managed to build, none of them is processing anything. And then they granted license in monopoly to one Fulani man to refine for all of us. Having taken, by their semi-exclusive list, having taken the ownership and control of the oil and gas assets of the owners. It is by that exclusive list. So those who are crying about resource control, if you are not discussing the constitution that took the oil and gas from you, then you are either ignorant, dishonest, or both. We have explained this sufficiently to use strong language in describing those who cling onto this constitution on one hand and are crying about the consequences of it on the other hand, including those who are being beheaded across the middle belt, sweeping towards the south now. You cannot cling onto the constitution that took away the guns from you and handed it over to people who have been planning to kill you since 1804. And you know, you have education, you know that that is the case. Your governors cannot issue one rifle. And you know that that is the case. Why? Because that constitution puts arms and ammunition, puts police and military on the exclusive list, such that you who live in that insecurity cannot plan your security. Otherwise, by what means are you going to organize your defense from people who are pointing AK-47 at you in your farmland, having been allowed to come into the territory by those who are inviting them openly? We saw when Rufai told us that he went to 14 different countries to give them money, people who are killing people in the state he was governing and across vast territories beyond that state. Fulani people that were invading from everywhere. We saw the Buhari that was Fulani himself and patron of Mieti Allah that was organizing the Fulani herdsmen at the center of the killings. Yet we allowed him to be our president. We allowed him to be commander-in-chief of that military that will preside over our security. We're just pointing out to you the various things happening to you every day where you are, whether you are in Boni or you are in Badagry, whether you are in Ibadan or you are in Calabar, whether you are in Ilori or Jos, and everywhere in between, all the way to the Sokoto and Maiduguri extremes. Everything happening to you that is negative is flowing from this bad arrangement. And we're saying there is a mechanism for arresting the situation today. That mechanism has been activated. The only thing remaining is for those who are living in that misery, the ones who come to shout about the election that go upside down. When the Constitution puts election into federal and state offices, meaning your governors, your state assembly members, your senators, your house members, the president of the country, are all the business of that illicit federal government to determine for you. Now they've lumped local government into it, such that it is from Abuja that your local councillors and the council chairman will be determined. It doesn't matter how you vote. 68 such items. So when your security is compromised, your economic assets detained, your right to do even your infrastructure, basic infrastructure, your right to refine and have petroleum products that we have crude. So all the means of production completely confiscated. What are you going to be able to do in that kind of a setting? For the same constitution that hands over the spare key of the treasury. And so we are saying that we have arrived at that juncture in which nobody should be allowed to drag us any further in that journey to nowhere, in that journey of death, in that journey of damnation, which has been running in cycles of 4 years. Every 4 years, the same criminals turn up. The political parties all of them subscribe to that constitution. Anybody who wins amongst them will swear to govern, defend and uphold, govern by, defend and uphold that constitution. That constitution is the guarantee for the humongous sums of money they share among themselves every month. And therefore their wealth and opulence. That constitution is also the guarantee for the destruction happening to you and the impoverishment visiting you. So how come, except we're all under spell, how come we allow these few people to come every 4 years to persuade us to come and renew the life of that instrument of death by voting in the pretense that we're a democracy? And what is the meaning of democracy? What's the definition of democracy? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. The simplest definition. That government of the people means that you, the people, determine, like we claim in that prayer that Nigeria claimed in its preamble to that constitution, that we, the people, solemnly resolving to live together, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the constitution. That is the government of the people. It is that claim there that makes it government of the people. It is that assertion that you are the ones who decided everything and set the rules above to determine the boundaries of the powers of government, to draw the line between where the citizens' right stops and where the government authority begins, to determine the formations you want to live in, to determine the matters that will be... Am I coming through?
Yes, sir, you're coming through.
And so, what NINAS is doing, after 25 years of the operation of that constitution, after all the processes to wake up all the victims, from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, from Sokoto to Lagos, all the nationalities have been involved at the highest possible levels and at the lowest possible levels. We do not leave anybody out. Anyone who tells you, including the community leaders, whether they are religious leaders, the media, the professional bodies, Bar Association, for instance, the NGOs and civil society organizations, and the political parties themselves, they have been sufficiently engaged, including the ones that have now, beaten their way to power. The ones that left the place before them, starting from the Obasanjo of 1999, the PDP, and all of those who are now preparing to say, oh, it might be better this way and not that way. Peter Obi was in PDP, contesting the election. He was in ABGA. Now he's in Labour Party. Who knows where he will be next? So they are all united. Atiku had contested the election as he had been vice president or in PDP. Then he contested the election from what has become APC now. Then he comes back to PDP and was able to contest. So how am I going to make a distinction between any of the parties? Because it's the same set of people. When they lose their ticket here, they jump into the other one. But they are all united by that constitution. They are all in the knowledge that when they win, they will get that benefit. You go back to your misery. And so the objective of these weekly meetings is to open up all of this, to tell those who may not already know that these are the things going on, and that there is a countrywide mobilization towards rescuing ourselves from this kidnappers' vehicle that Unitary Nigeria has become. The broadcast you listen to, so that we can begin to tie it together to the present time, to chart our way to where we need to go next from where we have arrived. You can see it's not theory like some people might imagine. And we're sorry for them, because eventually they will see that the vehicle they drive begins with a theory of science that now progresses into technology based on that science. And then they have a vehicle to drive. The ones who fly, the ones who use all kinds of communication gadgets, it begins with the clear theory of what can become what. Then technology people come to operationalize that theory, that scientific theory. And it is in that operationalization that you now begin to see all the things that technology is doing for you. And so when people who are unable to reason anything through, who are unable to engage in critical thinking, to interrogate the situation confronting them, begin to talk condescendingly on the clear thought that has built up to this, clear package of solution, already been operationalized. If you did not understand what Pronaco did, and you did not understand what MNN did in going to court in 2007, because Pronaco had brought the owners of the sovereignties, confiscated and corralled, aggregated into Nigeria without discussion since 1914. Pronaco had identified them, invited them to come to discuss their union. After which, the key leaders went to court in 2007 to say, we did not make this constitution, to kickstart the process of reworking the entire thing. And then As we were doing all of that, the flawed characters and elements kept going to election after election, hoping that we'll get one out and let them be. And then the ones in the National Assembly now step into the shoes of Britain, the sovereignty that they've joined against us. To be talking about amendment of a document we have not made, of a fraud, of a forgery, and our lives are being ruined, and they sit in Abuja thinking that they are too far away from everybody. I'm sorry for them, because they might be thinking that unless they are persuaded, like some ignorant people say all the time, oh, how are we going to persuade the government? How are we going to persuade National Assembly? We are saying that they are committing treason on account of willfully holding on to a forgery that they know to be a forgery. If they didn't know before, from the time we went to court in 2007, there's nothing that can absolve them from maximum punishment for being part of that criminality of running Nigeria with a fraudulent instrument, of sucking the blood of people in the manner they are doing. Because by the instrumentality of that constitution, they confiscated everybody's economic assets. They know exactly what they are doing. And they share the money peacefully, away from the owners, far away, thousands of miles, or at least hundreds of kilometers away from the owners of the assets. Otherwise, tell me what portion of those trillions they share in Abuja that is produced in Abuja. It is the oil and gas of people in Bayelsa. It is the proceed from the sale of people in Ibuna, in Akwa Ibom. The environment devastated. It is the proceeds from the crime of controlling the ports that belong to those whose lands wash those shores. Whether they were in Badagry or they were in Borneo or they were in Calabar, they were Oron. It is the crime of putting on that exclusive list the solid minerals that makes it possible for somebody to sit in Kano or Sokoto to hand over the limestone of Benue to Dangote and his cousin that operates in the name of Boa. Between the two of them, you are now talking of Africa's richest man and second richest man. By the confiscation of economic assets that belong to thief people. The same thing for gold. There are people who own those fields, those lands in Zamfara, the place they call Zamfara State now. The indigenous people of that territory are not involved in the mining of gold going on there. The same marauders are the ones mining the gold and cutting it away because of that exclusive list. It goes all the way to Osun and Oyo. Let those who have access to Pastor Enoch Adeboye ask him whether his community called Ifewara does not have gold. And ask him whether there are people in Ifewara that are partaking of that mining. The cocoa farms they had there, unfortunately for them, the cocoa farm that sent all of them to school. The gold deposits are underneath that cocoa farm. And Fulani marauders took over the place, mining the gold using the cocoa trees. They're cutting them down to cook for themselves, mining the gold, and their numbers 3 times what you find in the community. And people had to flee because if you come near, they shoot you. No police can be told, no army is coming. Because that gold is solid mineral. Solid mineral is on the exclusive list. It is whoever they allow to go there that will go there. The owners of Nigeria by virtue of this unitary constitution. It is a sin on the part of all of those who have tolerated this abomination for this length of time. destroying the lives of millions and millions of people because Nigeria is cooking them in a pot to serve their meat and having sucked their blood away. That's what Nigeria is doing to everybody. By the instrumentality of that constitution. But the constitution doesn't operate itself. The human operators of that constitution are all of those in the political parties that come to invite you to election every 4 years. The ones who emerge, the ones who are planning to contest again across all the parties, they are the operators of that constitution. They are the ones who drag you to election, because it's only political parties that contest election in Nigeria. And it is only by election, by the process of election, that the life of that constitution is renewed every 4 years. So if you are looking for the monster that has reduced you to what you have become, it is that your twin brother, that your cousin, that your nephew, that your uncle, that is in PDP or APC or Labour Party or ABGA or Action Alliance, whatever be the name of the political party, they are the witches in that coven operating that constitution against you. They know you don't know. So some will come and say, oh, I will provide the excellent leadership. They have their marketers. Characters like Pat Tommy. Oh, it is leadership. Leadership of what? We are saying that it is this constitution, definitely, that has made leadership, the quality leadership, impossible. It is this constitution that provides massive avenues for corruption and protects the beneficiaries of corruption in black and white. It is this constitution that absolves the government of responsibility towards you for anything good. But you have a responsibility to yourself and the generation unborn. And so I was saying that the broadcast by which we began the session today was made September 11, 2022, in the period leading to 2023 presidential elections, against the backdrop of the NINAS constitutional force majeure, which had prescribed the suspension of the journey to that election under that constitution as a mark of our rejection to that constitution, and in place of election, a transitional process for the constitutional reconstruction of Nigeria. This was what NINAS placed on the table since the 16th of December in 2020. So that broadcast you listened to was being made at the time. The people we were inviting into this redemption pathway were mobilizing themselves to election. Meanwhile, just before the force majeure in December, there have been a countrywide protest that they tagged NSAS. We had all these things ready, but because we hadn't come public with it, we went to them to say, this might be an opportunity to put that demand forward. If you are now offended by what Nigeria is doing to you, of course, it was SARS, police, that was killing them, that they were pointing to. But the same people who were protesting the SARS by way of NSAS were also suffering from the electricity that is not available to anybody. We're also suffering from the wider insecurity, including the invasion by Fulani militia. They were also suffering from the infrastructure that was not there, nothing that supports them. They were the ones running away from the country. But as the NSAS protests began to gather, we tried to get them to say, we tried to educate them about where the problem was coming from. Even the SARS, that is a special anti-robbery squad, it was because we tried to explain to them, it is because of the centralized, policing arrangement that you now have the police service force in Abuja that will have to take charge for everything that happens across all the communities throughout Nigeria. And then what you get from that kind of a thing is what became the SARS. Because if the federating units were organizing their policing, you won't have SARS in that manner. It will be like other police services everywhere else in the world. The local county will have its own. Even institutions like universities who have their local at every layer. Once you can finance it, you because that your security is local to you. It is where you are that has to be secured. There's nobody who will know how to secure it better than you who live there, no matter how well intentioned it may be. But it is the Nigeria that is operating on reverse gear that will put one police force in charge of this vast territory with this, magnitude of diversity, language, culture, religion, everything, even sheer size of the territory. And so it is against the backdrop of what we told the NSAS people when they were organizing to say, put this issue of constitution that is responsible for everything else happening to you. Or will you protest the police today and protest the electricity tomorrow, protest the road the next day, protest the election another day? You will be in protest for 500 years because it's not one protest that will solve any of those things. You have to be at it and be at it and be at it. As long as you have not pointed at the source of the problem, those who are benefiting from the bad arrangement they imposed on you will continue to do what they are doing, and you will continue to sink deeper and deeper into your misery until you run away or you die. They refused to listen because they were more interested in getting to join the sharing. You had when Buhari sees them with not too young to run. Or like just organize, form a political party, leave us for now, organize yourself and go and win election. They believed it and just blocked their ears. We made broadcasts from that toll gate in the period before they shot them. We were telling them that if you don't frame your demands in a manner that can compel better behavior by the government, they are going to stand on that constitution and shoot at you. They were arguing with us until they shot them in that number you saw. And so this broadcast of 2022, September 11, was in the period leading to that election where those same people had now regrouped, identifying a great leader that will emerge if they all vote together in election. We were telling them that this constitution is guaranteed that will fail. Listen to that broadcast again. Thank goodness YouTube has timestamp. Go and check the date. Go and listen to that broadcast as we have the title today. And you will see that we were telling them at the time they saw that protest did not solve their problem. They now wanted to install by election under that constitution a better leader. And we told them it is the constitution that is responsible for the bad governance we have had. If you go to election under that constitution, the same people you are trying to dislodge are going to stand on the provisions of that constitution, controlling INEC that they control, controlling the police they control, and all the DSS, and everything that you need on election day to declare whatever they declare. Your votes will not be basis of swearing in the next president. They argued with us arrogantly too. And so, what were we going to do? We allowed them. They went to the election. We all saw the outcome. Their candidates of obedient movement won the election by won the majority votes required and met all the conditions. The candidate that did not get even half of the votes and who did not satisfy even the minimum conditions, constitutional stipulations, as disputed as that constitution is, but at least it remained the modus vivendi until we have a replacement by discussion. That candidate was coronated. INEC declared him, Court of Appeal supported it, the Supreme Court put a seal on it of finality. Now from that point, we again arrive at August of 2024. July, they began to advertise, end bad governance. Again, we sought out, because there was at least 1 month of planning, unlike NSAS that began just by itself. We sought out the leaders of this End Bad Governance. We reached out to them from every side. Let us seize this opportunity. Can you see this is the third time NSAS had come and gone, Obedient Movement had come and gone, repeating the same mistake of working with ignorance and dishonesty. Let us dress back and define the change we seek. When you're coming to do protest, there must be something that is the destination you want. There must be something you are rejecting. Can you define what you are rejecting? Can you define what you want in place of it? Can you then define the mechanism for attaining that which you want? Overcoming that which you reject? None of them wanted to do this, analysis. This simple reasoning that will have set everything straight before them to say, if what is happening to us in corruption, if what is happening to us in subsidy, that they withdraw and restore again, if what is happening to us in the impunity we see, if what is happening to us in the infrastructural decay we see, if what is happening to us in the poverty and hunger that has come to join it is coming from that constitution, and our signature is sitting there as authorization of that damnation against ourselves, then the proper solution is to turn off the tap. That it is that constitution that is the tap from which everything else they put on their list was coming from. But what did we find? The organizers of the protest, who maybe just to fit themselves into the flow of the moment, maybe preparing for how they will take advantage of it in 2027 election. Some of, including the one in New York, they put constitution and then loaded the place with all kinds of things that now gave the government the opportunity to say they don't know what they want. That they don't, because even looking at that list, how can you say the constitution should be scrapped? And you are in that same list talking about electoral reform to get ready for free and fair without talking about the constitution that makes it impossible for any of those things they wanted to happen. It is the constitution that brought petroleum to where we're now discussing subsidy. It is the constitution that brought the bad governance in all the ramifications you see. So why are you unable to separate the source, to the symptom, from the ailment itself? The constitution is the source from which all these are happening. If you then say constitution reconstruction, that is terminate, your demand is an end to that constitution, and you adopt a plan, something that they have to commit to. What NINAS has in his 5-point proposition is the plug and play. Because in the 5 points, it says the government must now, our proposition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the first proposition, we say the government must now acknowledge that unitary constitution is freezing Nigeria is upside down. The protesters, whether it's of NSAS, of End-Bad Governance, or the Obedient Movement that were talking about change, is there anybody that can say that constitution is not the problem, such that they cannot adopt it as their number one demand? Because it is when you define that problem by yourself that you can say we reject it. And therefore, your demand will be that the government must now come down from its pretense of pointing at statistics of animal farm for you to say no economy can be built on this fraud. Then is there any one of them that can say that if the constitution is the problem, that it is not the commissioning of that constitution that is the solution? None. And so it becomes your demand number 2. Government, you must acknowledge this problem for what it is. It has lasted too long. You must commit to decommissioning it. You must commit to no further election, to suspending further national elections for now. so that we can go and rework this matter after so many years of... Nigeria have been waiting in this bus stop since 1967. And everything has been plunging downward and downward and downward to this date. Why can't that demand be made expressly? Labor movement, bar association, all the NGOs and civil society organizations that are, citing all kinds of things going wrong. So that is number 3. And then the crux of the matter of how to, the replacement for that constitution you are rejecting. The mechanism for replacing it is to now get the owners of the sovereignty to decide among themselves, first, whether they want to federate, and on the terms they will be federating, which is number 4 of our proposition and prescription. Why can't those who reject the atrocious outcome of the unitary constitution align themselves with that particular demand, so that the owners of the sovereignty can go and discuss and make out the proper constitution that can settle everything? If they make that constitution, they will not make provisions that create avenues for corruption. They will not include immunity clauses in the manner we find it. They will not hand the spare keys to the treasury to the heads of the executive branch who enjoy that immunity in section 308. They will not put 68 items on the exclusive list that took away all the economic access into the hands of people who are frittering it away among themselves and sharing it in trillions among themselves. So that is item 4. And then item 5, that there must now be a time-bound announcement of when these things will be done according to these prescriptions. So what we are saying now, and this is the way the way I sound now, is the way we have been sounding across the last 20-25 years, telling those who are in that in that vessel of pirates. Nigeria has become a vessel being sailed by pirates, and all of those who are lamenting one thing or the other are passengers in that vessel. And we're telling them this is what you can do to recover and overpower this less than 1%. The government and the civil servants and all the army and police and DSS, all of them that are ruining the lives of these millions of people, come to less than 1% of the country's population. Shame on the rest of everybody who is complaining about anything. No matter what it is you're complaining about, it is your fault that less than 1% of these 230 million people can hold you hostage for 25 years with all the education you have, with all the exposure you have, and you are busy wringing your hand and talking trash all over the internet. Whereas there's a mechanism on the ground. All you need to say today to end that trauma is to say you won't go to another election under this constitution. That immediately chokes the oxygen off that constitution. The next election in 2027, we have 3 years to listen to ourselves and act on what we are. There's no offense involved. It is the government that is committing treason. If you don't challenge that constitution upon which they are drawing power illicitly to harass you and kill you and impoverish you while they grow in leaps and bounds, stealing and sharing, it must then be your fault. You don't care for yourself and the generation after you. You deserve to be enslaved if you allow this constitution that you can take down to stay. Because they are working their way now to, they are wasting everybody's time, just occupying everybody. I know that there are people now watching, what do they call it, Big Brother and all kinds of nonsense. Thank goodness the Olympic ended in the disaster. Thank goodness there's no World Cup going on now, because those are all the things they throw at you. Chelsea and Man U, they promote it to the level of, as if everything in life depends on whether Barcelona will win Juventus. But you're not asking why you don't have electricity. You're not asking why the crude oil that Nigeria sells 3 million barrels of every day is not available to be processed and sold to you. What is your share of that crude oil if you are now paying full market price for what they have to import? Who owns that crude? Is it the people in government house or you? It is the constitution that will define that. You are not interested in that, and you are coming to cry to me that you don't have petrol, and therefore you want to go and say, oh, we don't agree. Oshebe, Oshebe. Not in 21st century. If you go with Oshebe, they will shoot you. And so, what we're saying to you is that this same end bad governance. We saw Issa El-Buba leading, marching all over the place. He wants a good governance, end of bad governance. Under which constitution? Why are you not able to say that your demand is to terminate the source of that bad governance? So these are dishonest characters because we had engaged them sufficiently. The rest of us who have not been involved, who are thinking they're in some kind of cocoon, maybe you work for Shell, maybe you work for Central, a distinct people on your ancestral space. Self-determination is an incident of that sovereignty. What is the meaning of self-determination? Just what it says, that you are the one to decide how you live in that identifiable space. Yoruba in Yoruba land will decide whether they want to be a country of their own or they want to be in any kind of union with anybody. And if they are so decided on what terms, they would be the ones to negotiate and agree on it. That is what becomes a federation. And if they want more autonomy, they can then insist on confederation, the type that Germany and France and Portugal are doing in European Union. So you take responsibility for more things for yourself instead of the federal government that could be doing it for you. So it's just a matter of degree of autonomy between the federation and the confederation. But it has to be you deciding, not anybody else. It's not the government that you, because it's when you've done all of that, that you now come to the third compartment. You have identified the owners of the lands that will federate. They have gone to, in the second compartment of a transaction, that firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as indivisible must be after they have discussed. Yoruba discussing with Ijo and Igbo, Ogoni discussing with Anang and Efik, Chief discussing with Jukun and the Doma. Everybody coming together with the map. At every point in time, there's a map on the table. Everything about self-determination and sovereignty begins and ends with maps and constitutions. Where is the boundary? What powers do we have in relation to the union office, if we still have one, the citizen? It is the constitution that settles all, and it is in that second compartment of sitting down to negotiate whether to be in union or not to be in union. It is after you've done all of that that the question of documenting what you have agreed will now arise. That is where a constituent assembly, a constitution drafting mechanism will be put in place. Constitution drafting is part of the terminal processes of constitution making. But a Mekanyoku diplomat of many, many seasons went to Abuja to tell the Tinubu that they have to start by drafting constitution. For who? Have you discussed with the people you want to draft that constitution for, and they tell you they want to be in union? Or you want to continue where the British stopped and where Absalom Abaka and his co-travelers dumped us in 1999 to go and draft constitution without talking to the owners of the land? Is it not lunacy between the two of them and all the people that went with them? Look at the delegation there. Look at the people there. So you can see the madmen that are thinking for you. Where have they been since 1999 when this constitution was imposed? Where have all of them been? What have they been? What have they said about this matter since that time? And the people who identified the problem from 1999 and who began to organize the solution to it, all of you are ganging up to go and sit in Abuja thinking that unless people come to Abuja because there's illiteracy and ignorance, there's mediocrity that has that gone to the high place. I'm sure you saw Yadudu talking down on the demands on whoever is saying that the constitution has to be redone. The the same lunatic that processed this madness for Absalom Abaka in 1999. Yadudu was Abacha's chief legal advisor. He was the one that, drew up that, he was the one that he was putting finishing touches on that constitution before Abacha dropped dead on them. And then Absalom Abaka retained him and mandated him to process into finality. They wrote the decree of how it will come, decree number 24, with an instruction that they final in concealing it from those who will be handed power. They went to print it in the private press of Ibrahim Bangada called Heritage Press, somewhere behind the custom headquarters in Abuja, Zone 4. The area between Zone 3 and Zone 4, it's in the background there to where the custom headquarters used to be. Heritage Press, that was where they printed that thing in the dark, so that the people in government did not get to see it. The people in that government that was handing over power did not get to see the constitution by which they will hand over power. Even the ones who swore to take over power on May 29, 1999 did not see the constitution by which they were going to govern. Eventually, National Assembly gathered, and they were still printing more copies to bring to them. That was how we entered that kidnapper's vehicle. We can even pardon those who jumped in 2000 and in 1999, because the threat then was that the military may refuse to go if you refuse to accept the constitution. Okay, let us leave them aside. But there were people in Nadeko who should not have gone into that election, because Nadeko had a meeting of whether they should go into election under a constitution they've not seen. The decision was that they should not. It is these same flawed characters that broke away from that decision, led by Bola Tinubu. He became governor of Lagos State, breaking ranks with people who fought with him all the while. And then, okay, you have become governor. Why can't we go back to the business? Of course, when none of them will lead the initiative, we came from outside, and that was what became Pronaco. 164 ethnic delegations discussing the same matter. That is the owners of Nigeria from all the four corners of the union. Buhari being part of the Fulani delegation that came alongside with Syed Abubakar. Let those who know where to find them in Casino Sokoto go to find out from them, ask them whether they were not part of this discussion that became NINAS of today, coming from Pronaco that called that conference, and we had an outcome. We sat in plenary in Lagos, sat in plenary in Port Harcourt, sat in plenary in Enugu, sat in plenary in Jos, sat in plenary in Kano, and came to conclude in Lagos. All the groups that had arms, Asari Dokuba and his volunteer force, Ghana Dance and his OPC, Wazirike and his MASOP, we persuaded all of them to put their guns aside, come to a meeting of all, so that we can decide whether we proceed or we adjust. We came out with a draft that would have taken us back to being a federation. Obasanjo was opposed to all of this from the beginning. He went on national TV to say it was treason if we called a meeting of the owners of Nigeria. Today he's hopping from place to place like one who has lost his mind, talking trash. Whereas he knows where the problem is, because he was the one that processed the 1979 Constitution into being by decree. He removed everything that the Constituent Assembly did. Let those who know where to find Obasanjo go to ask him, how did we come to 1979 Constitution? That was initiated by the Murtala Mohammed that toppled the foundation of the Federation of Nigeria in July of 1967. That's how we got to where we are now. And we are still dilly-dallying around the matter. Look at the number of people who are dying. The number of people whose lives have been ruined. The black man is doomed unless this matter is resolved, wherever they may be. Whether they went off to America on slave ship, or they flew by themselves to this third round of... we are just saying that between the last, across the last 2 weeks, we are reporting to you how close we are to complete success. That constitution is dead and gone, and that is why everybody going to TV these days, with all the problems confronting everybody everywhere, what do? Their answer is the same. Constitution has to be reworked. Tinubu says, oh, let me finish with the economy. Because the people that came to see him did not have a clear idea of what the problem was or what the solution could be. They went because they had, I don't even know what they thought they were taking to him. The blind leading the blind. How can you start a process of this nature with writing the outcome? The peoples of Nigeria must negotiate their sovereignty unfettered, uninhibited, and it's not the business of government or National Assembly. There are many who are still in the ignorance of thinking that National Assembly is the one to lead them in the process. No. South Africa in 1990 had to solve this same type of problem. It took an announcement of the government of the day to acknowledge that apartheid constitutional arrangement could not sustain the society anymore. The same thing we demand today. That same announcement said they were going to suspend further national elections. They were going to decommission that apartheid. That they were going to suspend further national elections under the apartheid constitution. And that the owners of the sovereignty, the blacks, will have to come to table for the first time to discuss their sovereignty. And then it was a time-bound announcement. We will start tomorrow morning. We will finish in 2 weeks. What NINAS has on the table, the proposition NINAS placed before Nigeria and Nigerians since December of 2020 has the 5 things you must find answers for now, except you want Nigeria to go up in smoke. And it's heading so fast to where to go up in smoke. I'm sure most of us listening to Obi's Ekwesili, telling them that they don't have much time, they don't have any time at all to drag foot on this ground, on this matter. She was able to point out to them that the issue, the central issue, is not about writing another document. It is the discussion among those who will be in that union. That they are the ones who have to determine all kinds of things. They say, but the economy should be done first. Say, no, it is the constitution that is reason the economy is upside down, which we have been discussing for the past 1 hour plus. It is the constitution that took away all the means of production to render Nigeria the poverty capital of the world, with all the potentials here. What a shame. But the blame is less on the less than 1% governing the place. The 99% that have been docile, criminally docile, criminally ignorant. Who is going to explain to those who do not have education when all the PhDs are going around just like goats? Totally unconcerned and unconnected with what is coming to kill them where they are. What has rendered them poverty-stricken with all their efforts. What has collapsed the value of the currency they have in their hand. What could lead to Fulani turning up right at their doorstep and kill them. They are not interested in it. We could say they're under a spell, but that spell must have some kind of expiration. What about the churches in the land? Look at their numbers. Look at the noise coming from them. So where is that power they are using to hoodwink so many people? When if everybody is under such a spell, where is that power? They're inviting people to come and subscribe. And so we are saying that what NINAS has, to break it down, is actually one proposition. I'm sure some of us struggle with why we say 5 points, as if it is 5 different. No, it is one proposition broken into 5 components so that everybody can see exactly what the problem is. That's number 1. What the solution is. That's number 2. When would that solution be applied? Because we've been too long in it and we're in a dangerous situation now. That's number 3, when. Number 4 is how. How? We say it is the owners of the sovereignty in 2 stages that will discuss what will become their union and the terms of that union. That's number 4. How? Number 5 is then who will do what amongst, that is the how, the who, the when, and the what. Look at it again. 5-point proposition is about, number 1, what the problem is. Number 2, what the solution is. Number 3, when will the solution be applied. Number 4, how and who. The time-bound announcement is to tie the 4 together and tell the global community that we have drifted for so long. We have now come to our senses. Like South Africa came in 1990, and we are committing to solving the problem in this specific way and that specific way. That is what we're inviting everybody to do now. And the task has been done 95%. If those we're inviting now, in the 3 years left to the next election, will listen to us in 2024 and declare that they will not go to another election under this constitution. Say so loudly inside 2024. Say it as if your life depends on it, because it actually depends on it. Tell the political parties to close shop, because otherwise they should show you the constitution under which they are going to perform miracle if they replace the one that is there. And tell me how you are going to defeat people who came from the flanks and jumped in through the window to become president. You saw Wike boasting. You saw Akpabio running his mouth about how they will stay 8 years. How are you going to do it? And even if you succeed, what will change? What is it that will change? Let those who are going to nocturnal meetings with P2B and the like, the ones who are forming alliance and what do they call it, merger and all kinds of nonsense. Under which constitution are you planning to come and take power to change what from what? When you are not concerned about the constitution that determines everything against everybody, apart from the criminals operating it. We call them criminals because the constitution is a fraud with our signature implanted outside our view, outside our consent. 25 years is long time enough to tell them that it cannot continue. And so anybody who still subscribes to that constitution, who has sworn to defend and uphold, who is preparing to come to swear by going to another election, is a criminal that ought to be put away from society. Is a criminal that ought to be stopped. And so when we call them criminals, it is because they subscribe to a fraudulent instrument as basis of union, basis of democracy, basis of power and authority for themselves. So we have to rejoice that our onslaught, our campaign against the 1999 Constitution has succeeded 100%. The only thing remaining is for us to enforce our victory. And that enforcement is by the mechanism contained in our proposition, our 5-point proposition. Let people find the courage and the honesty to say that the NINAS is right, that constitution is the source of the problem, that they will not go to another election under that constitution, that we must go to transition in place of election to reconstruct the damaged constitutional basis of Nigeria. Anything short of that, it boils down to dishonesty, to now say, come and give us good governance, come and give us a subsidy of fair, come and give us corruption that will end, come and give us an election that will be ways model. We believe that if our people will listen now, it should not take more than 3 to 6 months from the time they make that concerted demand. Because the government will then, it won't take 3 days of any kind of action that anybody decides to put up for government to say yes or no to that. Because except the government is going to find an answer to the demand of acknowledge that this constitution is the problem. Is the government going to be able to persuade us with all of what they've done already that that constitution is no longer the problem? Why are they trying to write another one from the back door? By their action, they have already acknowledged. We're only going to demand that they make the kind of announcement that Frederick de Klerk made in South Africa in 1990. That's our demand. That should be our demand. The NINAS propositions must now become the demand of those who wish to depart from this damnation that is about to blow up in catastrophic collapse of the House of Lugard.